Hey guys, first Regardsman here, and so I'll be talking about the tactical class in Space Marine 2 and everything you need to know about strengths, weaknesses, and gameplay loops so that hopefully by the end of this video, you will have a better understanding of its intended playstyle whether you are a new or veteran player. Tactical Marines are among the most versatile Astartes in the Imperium. These guys usually form the backbone of a Primaris squad, and in Space Marine 2, that still holds true as the Tactical is an incredible range support class for pretty much any team comp, and Tactical is also the most popular class in Space Marine 2 according to the official stats by Saber, and I can definitely see why, as he has access to a staggering amount of range weapons, and he really is a very well designed class that is fun at any skill level. This class's main role is that of a range support and damage enabler for your entire team with things like global equipment regeneration or increased range damage. So if you're less interested in a frontline class and like to support your team from the back line, Tactical will fit that playstyle very well. He also has the largest selection of primary weapons out of any class in the game, with a heavy emphasis on bolters, with weapons like the Pyre Blaster and Stalker Bolt Rifle being some of the best boss killers in the entire game. The Tactical's ability to damage nuke bosses and hordes is also further enhanced by his signature ability, the Auspex Scan. This is one of, if not the single strongest class abilities in the game currently, simply because it allows you and your teammates to nearly instant kill some of the strongest enemies in the game. The most difficult situations in Space Marine 2 are usually boss spawns combined with extremis spawns, and being able to remove either one of these immediately makes your entire mission go significantly smoother. To use your Auspex Scan, you simply press your ability button to fire out a zone that will mark any enemy inside, and you can also hold the ability button if you want to aim your Auspex Scan more effectively. Though keep in mind that Auspex Scan does have a slight delay when you fire it, that will prevent you from parrying or dodging enemy attacks for a brief period, which can get you killed in some cases if you're not careful. The mark from Auspex Scan will last for 8 seconds, and this can be further increased with perk effects like Expert Timing. Enemies marked by the Auspex Scan will also keep their mark even if they leave the scanned area, unless you have specific perks like Concentrated Fire currently active. The damage taken bonus can vary a lot depending on what build you're using, since multiple tactical perks increase your Auspex Scan damage bonus, but on its own, the Auspex Scan will make Minoris, Majoris, and Extremis enemies take 50% more damage, while Terminus level boss enemies will take 20% more damage instead. The damage buff only applies to range and melee damage, however, so when you mark an enemy horde, try not to waste your grenades, as the only time this actually does more damage is if you take the perk Target Lock. I also want to mention that the grenade damage from your grenade launcher attachments on the bolt rifle and heroic heavy bolt rifle do not count as equipment damage, so you can go crazy with these during an Auspex Scan since their damage is initially buffed, and this also is a question I get asked quite a bit. The base cooldown of the Auspex Scan is 90 seconds, making it one of the longer class ability cooldowns in the game, so perk effects like Vital Data become very useful for him, since usually the thing you want to spend your Auspex Scan on is going to be an Extremis Horde spawn or boss anyways. Auspex Scan can also be applied with a perfect parry or block with the perk Battle Focus, but keep in mind the scan from your parry with this perk will not apply other Auspex perk damage bonuses and will only apply the base damage bonuses of the Auspex Scan. This used to not be the case, and Battle Focus would just apply the entire Auspex perk tree as well, but they got rid of that since it lets you parry one-shot 99% of enemies in the game. Even without that though, pretty much every application of Auspex is a top tier option, since being able to remove a threat on the battlefield before it is able to become a problem is an incredibly useful effect no matter what. And there are exceptionally few abilities in Space Marine 2 that even compare to how good the Auspex is at doing this. Just make sure not to miss, since a bad Auspex Scan can cost you and your teammates the entire mission. Your starting perk on the Tactical is that any unequipped range weapon will automatically reload after 10 seconds. This is not really that good of a perk effect, and despite having one of the best class abilities in the game, this is ironically one of the worst starting perks. And in some cases, it's completely redundant with perk effects like Gunstrike Reload that automatically reload your ranged weapons anyways, or his core perk Emperor's Judgment that also does the same effect on an enemy finisher. This brings us to the next part of the guide, which is the Tactical's weapon selection. This class has a truly ridiculous amount of primary weapon options, some of which are among the best in the entire game. Like I mentioned previously, there is a heavy emphasis on bolters here, major standouts being things like the Stalker Bolt Rifle for its incredible damage potential against Zoanthropes and especially the Neurothrope boss when combined with your Auspex Scan, or the Heroic Heavy Bolt Rifle thanks to its grenade launcher attachment that puts out a staggering amount of burst damage against Horde, while also being able to recover your lost contested health almost instantly. Other standouts include his Pyre Blaster that is one of the best everything killers in the entire game thanks to its ridiculous cleave and applying burn to entire hordes effortlessly. The Tactical also enables all of these weapons to perform better on him than most other classes, thanks to not only his near endless supply of range damage buffs, but also perk effects like Emperor's Vengeance that completely solve his ammo economy problems for more ammo hungry weapons like the Melter Rifle or Headshot Bolt Rifle variants. Now, unlike his primary selection, the secondary weapon choices on Tactical are a bit more limited, as he only has access to the standard bolt pistol, heavy bolt pistol, and plasma pistol. But considering the heavy bolt pistol and plasma pistol are the two best secondary weapons in the game currently, and he also has perks like plasma boost that can slot perfectly with plasma pistol builds to make this weapon better on him than any other class, it's not much of a downside. His melee selection is similar in that he only has two options here with the combat knife and chainsword, though this is subject to change, as there has been talk for ages about the potential of adding a power axe or power sword to this class, so by the time you're watching this, those weapons might actually be available on him. That being said, the melee weapons he has access to currently are really all he needs, as having the combat knife gives him access to two of the best melee weapons in the entire game with the heroic Argent Edge and Power Gladius. The Argent Edge being capable of staggering any enemy on the first parry for a gun strike, which not only saves you from being stun locked, but also triggers tactical perk effects like Relentless Pursuit very easily. And the Power Gladius is able to straight up one-shot bosses on the proper build setup on even absolute difficulty, which really fits the two major build archetypes for this class. Even the Chainsword, despite being power crept a little bit by the knife heroic options, is still an excellent choice, and Tactical really struggles to underperform even with his worst setups. That is not to say that Tactical does not have any weaknesses, however, as this class is one of the squishiest in Space Marine 2 and really is the embodiment of a glass cannon. He has next to no survivability perks outside of things like Fortitude and zero armor regeneration perks outside of his weapon perk trees, which does mean that when you do mess up or start getting stun locked on Tactical, the likelihood of you spontaneously exploding to high burst damage is pretty high. This is the biggest mistake a lot of players make with this class, is that you have to respect your lower HP, as you simply can't survive what a lot of the other classes can, and directly trading with enemy attacks is usually a bad idea. The Tactical also lacks any real escape method that you would find on a class like the Sniper with his camo cloak to instantly exit a dangerous situation, or the Heavy's Iron Halo that can stop all incoming range fire. The key to properly playing the Tactical is positioning yourself to avoid being in those kinds of situations as much as possible, as blocking the line of sight of enemies while also using your own high range damage to pick off Majoris range units will make things significantly easier for you and your teammates. When it comes to horde clear options, outside of weapons like the Pyroblaster, Melta, and Grenade Launcher, your best options are equipment spam with your Secure Stockpile perk and strategic use of your Radiating Impact perk. This is the strongest signature perk currently available to Tactical and will put out tremendous area of effect damage on a 90-second cooldown. The perk will trigger on any melee execute finisher, including Minoris enemies, so if you want to save your cooldown on this perk, use your Gunstrike executes more often, as performing single melee attacks on executable enemies will open up a Gunstrike opportunity to execute them instead of wasting your explosion. The actual explosion of this perk will occur from the moment you press the button to execute, so if you're far away from an enemy, be careful not to accidentally waste the effect. But beyond those major tips for the class, it is time to break down the full perk tree of Tactical and which perk options are currently his best in my opinion. Now for the Tactical perk tree, he is one of the best perk tree selections in the entire game, so we'll be going through all of these here for a little bit, starting off with the perk Balanced Distribution. Your primary weapon deals 15% more damage, but your secondary weapon deals 15% less damage. This got buffed up in patch 12 from a 10% buff and a 10% negative to a 15% buff and a 15% negative. I usually prefer this one on things like the Stalker Bolt Rifle or ones you really want that primary weapon damage. Losing 15% damage on your secondary does kind of suck on some of the options, but usually it's not too bad, and I can take this on most builds. Next perk here is Plasma Boost. When plasma weapons are 30% overheated, their damage increases by 40%, and their charge shots use 1 less energy. This perk pretty much carries the Plasma Incinerator at the moment. The Plasma Incinerator without this perk feels pretty god-awful in the game, and this is one of the reasons the Tactical is so damn strong with Plasma Pistol and the Plasma Incinerator, because without this perk, they feel significantly worse. Next perk here is Kraken Penetrator Rounds. Bolt weapons penetrate 1 more enemy, non-headshot damage increased by 50%. This perk effect got changed in patch 12. It feels way better now. It's actually one of the most entertaining perks in the game, because the way that bolt weapons work in Space Marine 2 is that without headshot damage and without this perk, you will be doing next to nothing on the body shot, and because of this perk's effect that ups your damage by 50%, you will be able to do significant damage to biovores in the turret. You will have better value on penetration, which is why this perk gives you more penetration in the first place, so a really good option for like the heavy bolt rifle and even the bolt carbine, because those weapons, they do benefit from that extra body shot damage, because per shot damage when you're like cleaving through hordes is pretty good here, and you especially feel this on Minoris enemies like Hormagaunts. Next perk here is Heightened Vigor. After a perfect time parry, block, or dodge, you deal 10% more melee and gunstrike damage, do not lose control of heavy hits, and cannot be knocked back for 10 seconds. A no knockback perk effect's already very strong in Space Marine 2 in general, but this one also gives you a 10% melee and gun strike damage buff, making one of the best variations in the entire game. And getting stun locked in Space Marine 2 sucks on every class, but especially tactical because you are quite squishy, so picking this one up, that will help you prevent that and feels very safe. Next perk here is Relentless Pursuit. After a gun strike, range damage increases by 25% for 10 seconds. This perk is very strong for pretty much any range build. I mentioned this in the original guide that Argent Edge takes full advantage of the gun strike opportunities for this perk. Are really good if you're trying to set up with like a Stalker Bolt Rifle, Plasma Incinerator, Melter Rifle. As long as you take the Argent Edge, you will be pretty safe and able to trigger this all the time. Next perk here is Versatility. After switching weapons, your secondary weapon does 25% more damage. This effect lasts until reloading or switching back to your primary weapon. Usually you will take this with a plasma pistol because plasma benefits a ton from this perk since you don't actually reload that weapon ever, so you get the full perk effect the entire time your plasma gun is out. If you combine this with the perk over here, Plasma Boost, you can actually put down a tremendous amount of damage to even bosses. Next perk here is Emperor's Judgment. After a finisher, the equipped ranged weapon reloads automatically, and your ranged weapons deal 20% more damage for 10 seconds. I actually love this perk on a lot of guns in this game. Usually if you are playing with other players, you don't actually have to suffer from ammo economy issues that much on a lot of the weapons on the tactical class, and because of that, being able to instantaneously reload a weapon like a Melter Rifle that has a 5 business day reload speed already is actually super useful, and a 20% damage buff here is also quite nice. Next perk is Steady Aim. Weapon spread and recoil reduced by 20%, and range damage against terminus level enemies is increased by 15%. The main place you take this perk is on siege mode because being able to obliterate enemies, especially the bosses, is incredibly important. The weapon spread and recoil reduction here really don't matter that much at all, but a 15% buff to terminus damage, that will help your kill time, and that is super useful in this game. But on most other like hard strats and operations, it's not super useful, but you could pick it up there as well. Next perk here is Emperor's Vengeance. Killing a Majoris or higher enemy restores your power weapons ammo by 1 magazine. Cannot exceed maximum ammo capacity. The cooldown is 30 seconds. This perk pretty much just solves the ammo economy for any gun in the entire game, but especially weapons like the Plasma Incinerator or Pyre Blaster, this will help them out immensely because they are very ammo hungry weapons. Obviously this doesn't actually help out your secondary at all, but that really doesn't matter too much because having infinite ammo on a ×2 headshot multiplier bolt rifle, Stalker Bolt Rifle, it feels very good to use. It's one of the best perks in the entire game, and especially on your core perk tree. Next perk here, Secure Stockpile. Equipment charge restored by 1 for all team members. The cooldown is 60 seconds. This is the best team perk in Space Marine 2 in my opinion at the moment, mainly because 60-second melt bombs, crack grenades, shock grenades, even frags, these just carry games in every single game mode. It doesn't matter if you're playing hard strats, operations, or siege mode, a global equipment regen is ridiculously potent as an effect in Space Marine 2, and it is by far the best option for the tactical class and really in the entire game. Next perk here is Aligned Aim. Range damage increases by 15% for all team members. I actually like this perk a lot. Having a bonus range damage increase here feels really good on bolter weapons, and you don't always have to play like the best perk ever with Secure Stockpile. Sometimes it is more fun to just use like full range weapon damage, and because of that, I do actually pick this up on more builds than I take Secure Stockpile. Final perk here is Transhuman Physiology. All team members restore 30% more contested health from range damage. This perk is also pretty strong. I don't pick this one up as often because Secure Stockpile is so damn powerful, and Aligned Aim I find more fun personally. But if you want to take this for like a little bit more of a margin for error on your CHP regen, you definitely can. Next perk here is Vital Data. Scanning an extremist or terminus level enemy restores your Auspex scan charge by 50%. This just gives you more Auspexes versus the enemies you want them against the most, and the Auspex scan does have like a 90-second cooldown like I mentioned before, so really good for him if you're trying to kill those big enemies. Next perk here is Priority Targeting. The mark from Auspex Scan lasts 8 seconds longer, the base is 8, but Auspex Scan ignores Minoris level enemies. This perk is pretty good. I usually take this one if I'm taking Expert Timing as well for the 75% damage buff, but a reduced duration on the mark because they have pretty good synergy there, since this one makes it so your Auspex Scan lasts longer, and losing Minoris enemies, that really does not matter because you are pretty much never Auspex scanning a Minoris to actually kill them outside of like super high waves on hard siege anyways, so for the most part, this is just all upside. The next perk is a target lock. Enemies marked by Auspex Scan take 75% more equipment damage. I don't think this perk is very good at all. Usually when you're using your Auspex Scan, you'll be using melee and ranged weapon damage anyways, and without this perk, equipment damage doesn't get buffed at all regardless, so it's really not worth taking unless you really want to like stack 50 bajillion melt-a-bombs in like a super goofy gimmicky way. But if you want to do that, I guess you could, but for the most part, I think these two perks here are far better. Next perk here is Battle Focus, a perfect time parry or block. It gives the parried enemy a mark from Auspex Scan. This is a pretty good perk for a melee build. I don't like it quite as much as I used to because back in the day, you used to be able to apply things like priority targeting, expert timing, or even things like concentrated fire on the scan from this one. Unfortunately, the Battle Focus scan is only a base Auspex Scan, which is not bad. Like, damage is damage, but I prefer the other option down here with precise calibration I'll get into in a second. The next perk here is Improved Efficiency. Scanning any 10 enemies or 3 Majoris or above enemies with 1 Auspex Scan restores equipment charged by 1. You pretty much never take this perk because if you're going for equipment regen, Secure Stockpile is way better. Like, there is really no reason to take this over Secure Stockpile ever, and you're also giving up 2 of the best Auspex perks in the entire gear tree here with Battle Focus or Precise Calibration. So for that reason, I think this one could use like a little bit of a buff or something. Next perk here is Precise Calibration. Enemies marked by Auspex Scan take an additional 75% damage, but Auspex Scan's radius is reduced by 25%. This perk buffs up your Auspex damage a ton. It is the only buff perk for like the actual damage in this entire column here, so really good if you combine it with stuff like Expert Timing or the perk here Concentrated Fire, and I do prefer this one on a lot of builds, mainly because when you combine it with the perk Concentrated Fire here, you have a 195% damage bonus to your Auspex, which is insane. Really good for boss nuking, one of the best boss killing combos in the entire game, and for that reason, Precise Calibration is a top tier option, even though losing 25% radius does kind of suck. Next perk here is Close Targeting. This perk is not horrific. The melee damage bonus here is not that strong, and you are giving up Auspex damage bonuses like Expert Timing and Concentrated Fire, but if you want to go for like a full melee build, you can definitely grab this one, but I do usually prefer the next perks here, starting off with Expert Timing. Enemies marked by Auspex Scan take an additional 75% damage, but the mark's duration is reduced by 4 seconds. The base is 8. Usually you take this with the perk over here, Priority Targeting, that I mentioned before, and it's a pretty good option if you don't want Concentrated Fire, I'll get into in a second. But for the most part, I do take the next perk, which is Concentrated Fire. Auspex Scan Zone lasts 60% longer, and enemies marked by the Auspex Scan take an additional 120% damage, but they lose the mark when they leave the scanned area. Now, them losing the mark when they leave the scanned area, that is hard for a lot of players to play around. You do have to know the enemy movesets, especially on bosses like the Carnifex, because you want to put this down like a Neurothrope is screaming, a Hellbrute is slamming their hammer, or a Carnifex is slammed into a wall, and because of that, you can definitely waste your Auspex with this perk, but for the most part, it is a very powerful option. It gives your Auspex way more value because not only are you getting more damage, you're also getting a longer duration, which is incredible. So really good perk effect here. I think this is overall the best in this column. Next perk here is Signal Jammer. After marking an enemy with the Auspex Scan, other enemies cannot call for reinforcement and automatically explode upon attempting to do so for 90 seconds. This perk is not horrific. I mean, blowing up reinforcement enemies, stuff like Battle Focus is pretty funny, but for the most part, once again, I would just take the perk I talked about before, which is Radiating Impact, because this perk is just way better, because a one-shotting whole hordes on a 90-second cooldown is kind of nuts. Next perk here, or I should say the final perk here, is a headshot will instantly kill a Majoris or Extremis level enemy marked by Auspex Scan. The cooldown is 120 seconds. This perk is not bad. This perk is just way better because this one has a 90-second cooldown and can one-shot whole hordes of Majoris. This one kills like 1 Extremis and 1 Majoris on a 120-second cooldown. It has been power crept a little bit because back when this perk was like out when the game first originally launched, you wouldn't have that many Majoris or Extremis compared to now, but these days, some of the stratagem modifiers spawn like 5+ Extremis. Horde mode will have you fighting like dozens of Extremis at a time, and because of that, it has had its value decrease, and because of that, its value has decreased quite a bit, but there are moments where you do just want to instantly kill a Majoris or an Extremis, especially in Rage Majoris, or just really annoying Extremis like Raveners or Lictors, and being able to do that even on a 120-second cooldown instantly is still pretty good. I just prefer the other perks, and that is pretty much all there is for the tactical tree. Now, tactical is a pretty decent procedure prestige perk selection, starting off with the perk Acuity. Each consecutive headshot increases headshot damage by 3% up to 15%. The bonus lasts 5 seconds without a headshot. This is a top tier option for any bolter in the entire game. This will also affect the Pyroblaster for whatever reason, so if you're using a bolter option on the tactical, which you usually are because most of his weapons are bolter options, I would definitely pick this up. Acuity is a very strong DPS buff, really good perk, definitely one of the better options for him. Next perk here is Skilled Supplier, and reserve increases by 15%. This is a pretty unique perk in that this will buff up your grenade launcher ammo, it'll buff up your primary and secondary. Even if you look over on classes like Heavy, his perk Additional Supplies, this will only affect your primary options. This is actually one of the only ammo increases in the entire game for a secondary weapon, so really good for that. I do usually pick this one up on like hard stratagem and operations builds because it's just more ammo and helps out your ammo economy a ton. The next perk here is Second Look. If no enemy has been scanned by the time the Auspex scan zone disappears, Auspex scan charge is restored. This perk is not god-awful in my opinion, but it's also not that useful. The main time this comes into play is if you're fighting against like a Zoanthrope or something and you happen to miss your Auspex, but usually that will not happen. Most of the time you can just aim your Auspex at the ground and hit any enemy you're trying to get, so for the most part I don't think it's super useful. And also it's kind of like a bad perk interaction here with the perk Concentrated Fire. This one says Auspex scan zone lasts 60% longer, and enemies marked by Auspex scan take an additional 120% damage, but they lose the mark and they leave the scanned area. When you have this perk, you actually have to wait for your Auspex scan to run out entirely, then it'll refund. So if you shoot this one out and you happen to miss, you won't even get the perk back immediately from this. So not super awesome, but not like the worst thing ever. Next perk here is God tier in Siege mode. This one is called Spare Power. Collecting an ammo box restores ability charge by 25%. In the Siege mode, you can just buy ammo boxes at requisition stores constantly and get your Auspex back over and over, and also get back all of your grenades. Really good synergy there. Now, in the hard stratagems and operations mode, I don't think it's quite as good, mainly because ammo boxes are far harder to come by. They're not like that rare or anything, but I would say for the most part, this is a top tier option in Siege, and in operations and hard strats is far more niche. But getting back ability charge on ammo boxes, that is pretty good. Auspex scan is an incredibly powerful ability, so definitely not a bad option. Next perk here is Resilience. Medicae Sims restore 40% more HP. This perk just helps out the pickup economy of your game. Anything giving you back more stim HP is just going to make every stim more valuable, and this class is quite squishy, so having an option to like get back all of your HP or significantly more HP does help him out a lot. I think this perk is actually quite underrated, so if you want to pick this one up for like operations and stuff like that, it is definitely beneficial. The next perk here is Fortitude. Health increases by 15%. A health increase is a pretty boring perk effect. This is also one of the best perk effects in the entire game. I would pretty much always pick this perk up on the prestige perk options for tactical because HP increases in Space Marine 2 are very valuable because number one, they prevent you from getting one shot, and on top of that, this game has a ramping damage reduction below 25% HP, so if you have a higher base HP, your effective HP goes up even more, so really valuable perk here. Definitely grab this one, probably like the best perk in this whole tree for like any build. Final perk here is Exigency Charge. When your health is less than 25%, ability charge regenerates 15% faster. This perk is trash. I don't know why this perk is even in the tree, to be honest. Like, there's not really a scenario you want to be below 25% HP on tactical anyways, and a 15% bonus to your ability recharge is just not remotely worth it at being below 25% HP. This class is quite squishy, and being that low can put you into one-shot territory. I would definitely skip this for better options like Acuity, Skill Supplier, Resilience, Fortitude, and Spare Power. These are probably the 5 best overall in my opinion, and these 2 are the worst, though Exigency Charge is definitely more garbage than Second Look. And that's pretty much all there is for the tactical prestige perk options. I would say, you know, if you're using a bolter, just take Acuity. If you're playing Siege mode, definitely pick up Spare Power. And if you're trying to use like operations and hard strats, Resilience and Fortitude are pretty much always good options. And that's pretty much all there is to talk about here. And that is pretty much everything there is to say in this guide for the tactical class. I do have a ton of build guides for this class on this channel that I regularly update between patches. So if you're curious about more specific perk tree setups, you can find them on this channel as well. But hopefully this guide helped you better understand how to play the Tactical class. This is one of the most popular classes in Space Marine 2 for good reason, as Tactical has a ton of build variety and some of the most iconic 40k weapons available to him. He's also a personal favorite of mine for this reason, and he is an amazing addition to any team comp, but if you are struggling with the Tactical, just give it some time, as he is one of the harder classes to play and takes some practice to reach his maximum potential. And if you want to watch me live to ask me questions about the game or just come hang out, you can find me here on YouTube or on Twitch with a link in the video description alongside a link to my community Discord. And if you like content like this, subscribe for more, and as always, thank you for watching, take it easy, bye.